I don't want to say very much about that. It was a very difficult time, and we are a family, and we will always be a family.
It's the ultimate Hollywood tragedy, a fairy tale born in a media firestorm, destined to burn out in the exact same way. For over a decade, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie were the undisputed king and queen of pop culture. A flawless, gorgeous empire of movie star glamour and global humanitarianism. But behind the glossy magazine covers lay a ticking time bomb. Today, the illusion is completely shattered, replaced by a bitter, dark war that has left their family fractured and a legacy ruined. Jolie is finally breaking her silence. The winery lawsuit. The Jolie and Pitt drama continues in the courtroom. While the world assumed that their long-awaited official divorce finalization in December 2024 would bring a peaceful end to their decade-long dispute, the reality has been the exact opposite. Their marriage is dead, but their legal warfare is more alive, more expensive, and more aggressive than ever. The primary battleground? A sprawling $160 million French estate and vineyard known as Chateau Miraval, the very place where they happily tied the knot back in 2014. The core of this multi-year corporate knife fight centers on a messy business transaction. Back in 2021, Angelina Jolie made the executive decision to sell her 50% stake in Nouvelle, the holding company that controls Chateau Miraval. She sold it to Tenute del Mondo, a subsidiary of the Stoli Group, which is controlled by Russian-born spirits billionaire Yuri Sheffiler. Brad Pitt was absolutely furious, launching a massive lawsuit claiming that Jolie had deliberately violated a strict verbal first right of refusal agreement. According to Pitt's legal team, the couple had a binding pact that neither party would ever sell their shares of the vineyard without the explicit consent of the other. Pitt's lawyers argued that by selling to an outside corporate giant, Jolie had forced an unwilling partner into his life's passion project and jeopardized the brand's hard-earned reputation. For years, Jolie's side fiercely fought back against these claims, insisting that no such consent agreement ever existed. According to recent, emotionally raw court declarations filed by Jolie, she actually wanted to sell her shares directly to Pitt to keep the business whole. However, she testifies that the buyout negotiations completely fell apart due to Pitt's aggressive demands. Jolie revealed that Pitt refused to finalize the purchase unless she signed a sweeping, ironclad non-disclosure agreement. This NDA would have legally barred her from publicly discussing Pitt's alleged physical and emotional behavior leading up to their 2016 separation. Jolie characterized this demand as an abusive attempt at corporate silencing, an effort to shield his reputation by trapping her in a financial chokehold. In her explosive, candid court testimony, Jolie bared the deep financial and emotional distress she faced during this secret corporate standoff. The events leading to my need to separate from my ex-husband were emotionally difficult for me and our children, Jolie admitted under oath. She explained that her savings were heavily tied up in the French estate, and because she refused to request alimony or child support from Pitt, she desperately needed the liquid funds from her share of the winery to establish a new home for her children. Jolie even detailed how she left Pitt full control and residency of their various family properties without compensation, hoping it would make him calmer after what she described as a difficult and traumatic period. Ultimately, trapped between a restrictive NDA and a severe financial crunch, she pulled out of negotiations with Pitt and sold her shares to the Stoli Group for $64 million. The legal fallout from that sale has reached a boiling point. The California Court of Appeal handed Brad Pitt a massive procedural victory by overruling a lower court's decision, officially dragging billionaire Yuri Sheffiler back into the heart of the California jurisdiction. The appellate court ruled that Sheffiler's extensive direct communications with California residents during the purchase meant he cannot hide behind international boundaries. Pitt's team successfully secured orders to compel Sheffiler and Stoli's former general counsel, Todd Kuleba, to sit for aggressive depositions. Pitt's camp celebrates this as a massive step toward proving a coordinated effort to blindside him, alleging that Jolie chose a partner she knew Pitt would despise. Jolie's camp has dismissed these procedural wins as empty chest-thumping. Her attorney, Paul Murphy, fired back with a pointed public statement. The ruling has no impact on the merits of the case and certainly has no impact on Ms. Jolie's case. At this point, Ms. Jolie is just looking forward to defeating the case at trial next year so that their family can finally focus their energies on healing and moving on. Sources close to Jolie emphasize that her motives were purely business-minded, asserting she chose the Stoli Group simply because they were a powerhouse global distributor capable of growing the vineyard's wealth for the ultimate inheritance of the children. They accuse Pitt of letting an ego and obsession for control drag out a bitter feud. Amidst this hostile corporate standoff, Jolie recently confessed to the devastating toll the lingering war has taken on her personal well-being, stating plainly, "Life has broken me a little bit." But if you think an inheritance dispute over a multi-million-dollar French winery is the darkest element of this collapsed empire, the reality of what is happening inside their own home is far more tragic. The fractured family, co-parenting, and the children's rebellion. If the battle over Chateau Miraval represents the cold financial front of this war, what is happening within the walls of their family home is the tragic human cost. For years, the public wondered how the complex co-parenting dynamic between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie would function once their 6 children grew into adulthood. The answer has arrived, and it is a stark, public rejection of the Pitt name. One by one, the Jolie-Pitt children are reaching legal maturity and taking deliberate, systematic steps to cut ties with their father. What began as a quiet distance behind closed doors has transformed into an unmistakable rebellion in the public record. The epicenter of this collapse traces back to September 14, 2016, aboard a private flight from Nice, France, to Los Angeles. What happened on that plane remains the defining catalyst for the family's total fracture. According to investigative reports and subsequent court filings by Jolie, an intoxicated Pitt allegedly became verbally and physically aggressive toward both Jolie and their eldest son, Maddox, who had stepped in to defend his mother. While the FBI and the Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services investigated the incident and ultimately closed the case without filing criminal charges against Pitt, the emotional damage was permanent. Jolie filed for divorce just 5 days later. The closely guarded, tightly unified front of the Brangelina family vanished in an instant, and the kids were thrust into a highly structured, intensely stressful custody battle that would span the next 8 years. As the children have transitioned into their 20s and late teens, their response to those painful events has played out in courtrooms and professional credits. The first public sign of a complete name change came from Zahara during her sorority induction at Spelman College, where she proudly introduced herself to a roaring crowd simply as Zahara Marley Jolie. But the symbolic shift quickly turned legal. Shiloh, upon turning 18, hired her own independent legal counsel and filed a formal petition in a Los Angeles court to legally drop Pitt from her surname, officially adopting the moniker Shy Jolie. Her attorney went on the record to clarify that this was an independent, deeply personal choice following a string of traumatic family events, handled strictly through the California legal requirement of publishing a notice in the Los Angeles Times. The dominoes continued to fall from there. Eldest son Maddox filed official paperwork to legally change his name to Maddox Chivan Jolie, completely shedding his father's surname. Maddox had already been working behind the scenes as an assistant director on his mother's film projects, entirely under the Jolie name. Even the youngest siblings, who are still under the legal age of majority, are signaling their allegiance. Vivian was prominently credited as Vivian Jolie on the Broadway playbill for The Outsiders, a production she closely co-produced alongside Angelina. Meanwhile, high school graduation records revealed that Knox chose to list his name strictly as Knox Jolie on his official diploma. The message across the board is uniform, deliberate, and undeniably clear. The children have chosen their side. Through all of this, Angelina has remained fiercely protective, positioning herself as the sole anchor for her children. In a recent profile, Jolie opened up about the profound transformative bond she shares with her kids as they enter young adulthood. "They know me more than anybody, and they still like me, which says a lot," Jolie joked. She admitted that her daughters, in particular, have helped her find her old strength during a decade where she felt heavily broken down by the legal system, stating that their resilience reminds me of what I may have lost. They kind of want me now to not just be mom, but to live freely again. Jolie has entirely paused her personal dating life for the past 10 years, pouring 100% of her energy into shielding her family and building an isolated, tight-knit sanctuary. For Brad, the reality of this estrangement has been a devastating pill to swallow. Sources close to the actor state that he feels profoundly alienated from his family and deeply regrets the massive, irreparable chasm that has formed between him and his children. Interestingly, a glimmer of connection remains with his extended family. Reports surfaced that Pax recently attended a private dinner celebrating the engagement of his paternal cousin, Sidney Pitt, showing that he hasn't entirely severed ties with his aunts, uncles, and grandparents on the Pitt side. Yet, when it comes to his famous father, the relationship is virtually non-existent. The sweeping custody agreements that once dominated their legal filings are a dead issue now that nearly all the children are adults. Brad has moved on romantically with jewelry executive Inez de Ramon, but the crown jewel of his life, his relationship with his 6 children, appears entirely lost to the shadows of the past. To grasp how a love story that once seemed so invincible could decompose into this level of toxic estrangement, we have to travel back across the timeline to where it all began. Ground Zero, the scandalous genesis, and the Aniston fallout. Let's hit rewind and go back to the summer of 2004. Long before they were an embattled family, they were the absolute center of the most scandalous love triangle in pop culture history. The backdrop was the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a slick, high-octane action comedy about 2 bored suburban assassins secretly married to one another. At the time, Brad Pitt wasn't single. He was one half of America's golden couple, happily married to Friends superstar Jennifer Aniston. They were Hollywood royalty, clean-cut, adored, and seemingly bulletproof. Enter Angelina Jolie, the industry's ultimate tatted-up, leather-wearing, Oscar-winning wild child who had already survived 2 chaotic, highly publicized marriages to Johnny Lee Miller and Billy Bob Thornton. It was a volatile mix of gasoline and matches. From the second the cameras started rolling, the chemistry between Pitt and Jolie was reportedly so intense it practically altered the gravity on set. While both actors initially denied any physical infidelity during production, Jolie would later candidly admit to the New York Times that they genuinely fell in love while filming. They found endless joy in their joint weapons training, stunt rehearsals, and dance classes. The press caught wind of it almost instantly, and by late 2004, rumors of a massive off-screen affair were clogging up every checkout aisle tabloid in the world. The bubble finally burst in January 2005 when Pitt and Aniston released a shocking joint statement announcing their formal separation after 7 years together. Though they claimed the split wasn't the result of tabloid speculation, the public wasn't buying a single word of it. What followed was an absolute media-feeding structural firestorm. In April 2005, just 1 month after Aniston officially filed for divorce, paparazzi captured historic, long-lens photos of Pitt and Jolie vacationing together on a private beach in Kenya, playing in the sand with Jolie's toddler son, Maddox. It was the visual confirmation the world had been waiting for, and it triggered an unprecedented cultural divide. Retailers capitalized on the drama by manufacturing the iconic, infamous Team Aniston and Team Jolie t-shirts, forcing ordinary people to publicly declare their allegiance.
Everyone felt bad for Jennifer Aniston, poor Jennifer Aniston, and the whole world felt bad for her. And it was kind of unfortunate for all of them that this played out so publicly in every media outlet.
Aniston became the nation's sympathetic, scorned sweetheart, while Jolie was widely vilified by the press as a cold-blooded, calculating homewrecker. Jolie tried desperately to push back against the public narrative, famously telling Marie Claire that being intimate with a married man was something she could never forgive herself for, especially since her own father, John Voight, had devastated her mother through infidelity. But the public's perception of their ruthlessness was sealed in July 2005. 6 months after his separation from Aniston, Pitt participated in a massive 60-page editorial for W magazine titled Domestic Bliss. The stylized photos, conceptualized heavily by Pitt himself, featured him and Jolie playing house in a retro 50s-style suburban utopia surrounded by an army of look-alike children. When Aniston saw the tone-deaf spread, she broke her silence in a legendary Vanity Fair interview, famously remarking that her ex-husband was clearly missing a sensitivity chip. The sheer amount of public hatred directed at Brangelina during those first 12 months would have crushed an ordinary relationship. But Pitt and Jolie didn't flinch. Instead, they weaponized the chaos, turning a public relations nightmare into the foundation of a global empire. By the time Pitt's divorce from Aniston was finalized in October 2005, he was already flying across the globe with Jolie, fully embracing her lifestyle of international humanitarianism. The public's anger slowly morphed into utter fascination. People couldn't look away from this impossibly gorgeous, highly controversial couple who had broken all the rules of conventional Hollywood romance and gotten away with it. They had survived ground zero, but the intense, blinding spotlight they built their foundation upon would eventually become the very thing that consumed them. So, how did they manage to flip the script and transform from Hollywood's most hated villains into its most revered power couple? Building the Brangelina empire. With the public fallout from the Jennifer Aniston divorce still smoldering, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie pulled off one of the greatest reputation rebrands in modern corporate history.
They are two people who kind of represent, the most beautiful people in the world. And so when they get together, we're all kind of enchanted with their looks. That's really what it's all about. They're just perfect, physical specimens.
They didn't hide from the paparazzi, nor did they retreat into standard Hollywood isolation. Instead, they leaned heavily into an unprecedented, hyper-visible blend of high-profile humanitarianism and aggressive expansion of their multi-continental family. This unique strategy effectively shifted the dominant media narrative from one of toxic betrayal to a grand, deeply captivating story about a modern, multicultural, global empire. Almost overnight, the derogatory homewrecker and sensitivity chip headlines were completely erased, replaced by breathless, global fascination with a family that seemed to transcend the standard boundaries of conventional fame. The true foundation of this era rested on their shared public commitment to global activism. Angelina was already serving as a highly visible goodwill ambassador for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, and Brad quickly dove into her world headfirst. The couple began crisscrossing the globe, traveling together to heavily impoverished and conflict-ridden regions across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East to champion refugee rights and fund massive sustainability initiatives. In 2006, they officially consolidated their massive philanthropic power by establishing the Jolie Pitt Foundation. This charitable engine poured millions of dollars directly into global projects, funding everything from crucial wildlife conservation in Namibia to critical children's health centers in Cambodia and various large-scale community rebuilding efforts in post-Katrina New Orleans. Simultaneously, the couple was rapidly expanding their household through a dizzying, highly publicized mix of international adoptions and milestone biological births. Brad formally, legally adopted Angelina's eldest son, Maddox, from Cambodia, and her daughter, Zahara, from Ethiopia. Then, in May 2006, the media circus reached an absolute fever pitch when Jolie gave birth to their first biological child, Shiloh Nouvelle, in the African nation of Namibia. The intense global frenzy surrounding the newborn was completely unprecedented. Brad and Angelina safely capitalized on the manic public interest by selling the first official photos of Shiloh to People and Hello magazines for a staggering, historic $4.1 million. They didn't pocket a single cent of the windfall, choosing instead to route every dollar directly into their global foundation to fund deep humanitarian efforts. The pattern of massive growth and insane media valuations only accelerated from there. In 2007, the couple traveled to Vietnam to adopt their son, Pax Thien. The following year, in July 2008, the world watched in awe as Jolie gave birth to their biological twins, Knox Léon and Vivienne Marceline, in Nice, France. Once again, the couple masterfully orchestrated a high-stakes media deal, selling the exclusive first images of the twins for a record-shattering $14 million. establishing it firmly as the most expensive celebrity photograph collection ever captured in history. Just like before, the massive payout was deposited directly into their charitable foundation. The message to the public was clear. Brangelina was no longer just an ordinary Hollywood couple. They were a historic, benevolent institution, a sprawling, unified family of 8 that seemed entirely immune to the standard rules of celebrity gossip. During these legendary golden years, they existed as the ultimate, undisputed titans of the entertainment world. Wherever they traveled, an army of hundreds of flashing cameras followed, capturing a flawless aesthetic of effortless, impossibly gorgeous parents, guiding an impeccably styled multilingual family through international airports and high-end film festivals. They had successfully managed to reshape the entire concept of the modern mega couple, blending the absolute peak of traditional old Hollywood glamour with a progressive, deeply empathetic model of global citizenship. They appeared utterly invincible, a beautifully unified front operating at the absolute height of their cultural and financial power. Yet, this entire flawless construct was built on top of a blinding, high-stakes spotlight, and behind the scenes, the structural foundations of their empire were already beginning to quietly buckle. But if their global empire seemed totally flawless from the outside, why did their sudden decision to finally make things official lead to total disaster? The 7-year itch and the secret marriage. After a decade of public domesticity and 6 children together, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie had long insisted that they didn't need a piece of paper to validate their commitment. They famously claimed they wouldn't get married until marriage equality was the law of the land for everyone. But by 2014, the internal dynamics of their relationship had shifted under the gentle, persistent pressure of their growing children. The kids wanted to see their parents officially tie the knot, viewing it as the ultimate celebration of their unorthodox family unit. Listening to their wishes, the couple quietly began planning a private, highly secretive ceremony at Chateau Miraval in France, the very vineyard that would later become the bitter tomb of their relationship. On August 23, 2014, the King and Queen of Hollywood finally said, "I do," inside a tiny, sunlit stone chapel on their French estate. It was a deeply intimate, family-first affair with fewer than 20 guests in attendance. Every single aspect of the wedding was designed to center on their children. Maddox and Pax proudly walked their mother down the aisle, Zahara and Vivian threw flower petals gathered from the estate's garden, and Shiloh and Knox served as the official ring-bearers. Even Angelina's stunning, custom Atelier Versace silk satin gown was a collaborative family canvas, featuring an extraordinary veil, hand-embroidered with dozens of colorful drawings created by the children themselves. To the outside world, looking at the exclusive magazine covers, it appeared to be the ultimate, well-deserved fairy tale ending to a decade-long romance. In reality, the short-lived formal marriage wasn't a beautiful new beginning. It was the final, desperate attempt to stabilize a relationship that was already quietly fracturing under immense weight. The shift from a fluid, long-term partnership to the rigid legal structure of marriage seemed to magnify the hidden cracks in their foundation rather than heal them. Behind closed doors, the immense daily pressures of managing a massive global empire, coordinating 6 separate lives, and balancing 2 fiercely demanding, top-tier Hollywood careers were taking a severe toll. The initial, intoxicating spark that had carried them through the initial fires of the Jennifer Aniston scandal had slowly hardened into a routine of heavy scheduling and distinct emotional isolation. The couple quickly realized that the legal bond of marriage brought no new magic to save them from a growing, quiet resentment. Friends close to the couple later hinted that the actual wedding felt more like a closing obligation to their children rather than an organic, passionate choice between 2 lovers. They had spent 10 years running a relentless marathon in the bright glare of the public eye, and once they finally slowed down to stand at an altar, the exhaustion caught up with them. The secret French wedding, which should have been the absolute peak of their love story, ultimately signaled the beginning of a rapid, tragic downward spiral as internal pressures, conflicting lifestyles, and hidden personal struggles began to boil over. If the cracks in their personal lives were still carefully hidden from the public, they were about to expose their deepest marital demons on the silver screen. Mr. and Mrs. Smith versus By the Sea. If you want to trace the exact structural rise and fall of Brangelina's personal relationship, you don't even need to read the court documents. All you have to do is look at the only two major feature films they starred in together. Their entire decade-long romantic arc is perfectly, almost hauntingly captured on celluloid, bookended by two creative projects that served as literal mirrors for the state of their real-life union. The first project captured the dangerous, electric adrenaline of a secret beginning, while the second project became a dark, prophetic exploration of a marriage in its final, agonizing death throes. Back in 2004, Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a high-octane celebration of untamed chemistry. The film's narrative, two elite assassins trapped in a bored suburban marriage who suddenly discover each other's secret identities and try to kill one another, offered a perfect canvas for their explosive real-world connection. Every single frame of that movie crackled with an unscripted, dangerous magnetism. When their characters fought, danced, or traded sharp, snappy dialogue on screen, the global audience was witnessing the literal, real-time birth of Hollywood's most scandalous romance. It was a film fueled entirely by the thrill of the chase, the intoxicating rush of taboo attraction, and a shared, untouchable star power that easily conquered the global box office. Cut to exactly 10 years later, in the late summer of 2014. Immediately after tying the knot in their secret French chapel, Brad and Angelina didn't jet off on a traditional, relaxing honeymoon. Instead, they traveled straight to the isolated island of Gozo in Malta to begin filming a deeply experimental, intensely somber art house drama titled By the Sea. Written, directed, and produced entirely by Angelina herself, the film focused heavily on Vanessa, a deeply depressed former dancer, and Roland, her heavily alcoholic writer-husband, as they waste away inside a quiet, seaside French resort in the mid-70s. The fictional couple is completely estranged, trapped in a toxic cycle of emotional isolation, heavy drinking, mutual resentment, and total lack of physical intimacy. The parallels between the script and the hidden realities of the Jolie-Pitt marriage were staggering. To the public at the time, it seemed like an artistic vanity project, but looking back, it functions as an open, raw cry for help. Angelina cast her new husband as a frustrated, checked-out partner who spends his days drinking heavily at a local bar, while she played a woman consumed by a deep, hollow grief, locking herself away in a dark room. During promotion, Jolie tried to brush off the intense thematic weight, telling reporters that filming a marriage in severe crisis right after their own wedding brought them closer together. She claimed that sharing something in a deep, artistic way was a healthy exercise for an artistic couple. In reality, the brutal on-screen screaming matches, the physical slaps, and the heavy silences were far too close to home. The electric, playful energy of Mr. and Mrs. Smith had been completely replaced by a heavy, suffocating sadness. When the film bombed at the box office upon its late 2015 release, critics dismissed it as a slow, self-indulgent melodrama. But less than a year later, when the private plane incident shattered the family forever.
These Xeroxes of photos show Angelina's bruised hand and elbow, injuries she says she suffered during that explosive mid-air fight with ex-husband Brad in 2016 that ended their marriage.
By the Sea was suddenly recontextualized as a tragic, transparent autopsy of a dying relationship. They had spent their actual honeymoon intentionally acting out a marital collapse, completely unaware that the fictional tragedy they were capturing on screen was the exact reality waiting for them just around the corner. But as the dust settled on their final creative collaboration, their paths split entirely, launching them into two completely separate Hollywood universes. Solitary horizons. So yeah, their paths have split entirely, launching them into two completely separate Hollywood universes. Today, the unified brand of Brangelina is ancient history, replaced by two completely independent, fiercely successful empires built on the ashes of their shared past. Instead of leaning on each other, they are thriving in total isolation. proving that their individual star power was never truly dependent on their relationship. Brad Pitt has fully transitioned into his era as a revered Oscar-winning veteran and powerhouse producer. He continues to select intense, physically demanding acting roles, like his survival thriller Heart of the Beast, while his Plan B production company quietly dominates behind the scenes, shaping the landscape of modern cinema. Romantically and socially, he has built a completely new life, moving forward under a fresh narrative that separates him entirely from the domestic patriarch persona he occupied for over a decade. Meanwhile, Angelina Jolie has reinvented her trajectory as a highly selective auteur and a champion of deeply intimate human stories. Her recent starring role in the raw, personal drama Couture serves as a poignant reminder of her enduring artistic weight, echoing her own experiences with vulnerability and resilience. Alongside her selective acting, she continues to direct, run her purpose-driven fashion collective, Atelier Jolie, and pour her energy into shielding her tight-knit family sanctuary. The epic saga of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie leaves behind a staggering cautionary tale about the dizzying heights and toxic depths of ultimate celebrity. They defined an entire era of pop culture, proving that even the most beautiful, seemingly invincible empires can completely fracture under the blinding pressure of fame, pride, and unresolved trauma. If you want to stay updated on the latest Hollywood deep dives, make sure to hit that subscribe button.